On my own. Clogs.
Okay.
Ẹni tó fẹ́ ṣe fídíò lè ṣe ní aláwọ̀.
Kò ní ìdí fídíò rẹ̀.
Àti on mute bẹ́ẹ̀. Ní àwọn
Wọ́n
tí
ti
lè.
bẹ̀rẹ̀. Ẹ ṣe fídíò wọn. Anytime.
In the crisis, and on the crisis.
On the crisis.
On the crisis.
Mo tún ti rí ní sàn. Ilé mi.
So
Ten. Okay, I'm starting. All these are just hold it like this. In 5 minutes, I'll be done. This is done. Oh, as it's arranged. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Usenya de Udo, and I work for the Africa Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development as a program coordinator. I'd like to welcome you to today's policy dialogue. And thank you to everyone who has joined already. I've seen quite a number of people already. Thank you for making out time for this very important discussion. This is not the official welcome remark. I just want to welcome our guests and welcome the chairperson of today's policy dialogue. I see them quite very early. Today we have 4 guests in the house. We have the key speaker, and we have 3 panelists. We also have a very, very senior colleague in the development sector who is chairing today's policy dialogue. Our first panelist this morning is Idayat Hassan. Idayat Hassan is the director for the Center for Democracy and Development. It's a think tank organization based in Abuja. She's a lawyer by profession. In the past few decades, she has been on development issues, discussing how Nigeria can get better. And we also have Victoria based in Ohio today. She's the director of Spaces for Change. In the past decade, she has been advocating and defending the civic space and to ensure that Nigeria has a voice and Nigeria can lend their voice to developmental issues. And you are wondering if today is just for all women. No. We also have our male champions in the house. We have Charles Hussein. Charles Hussein is the country director of Christian Aid. Christian Aid is an international organization. He is, in the past decade, also have been speaking truth to power and advocating for better life for Nigerian citizens. We also have a very, very senior colleague in the house. He is our guest speaker. He's Dr. Hosseini Abdu. Dr. Hosseini Abdu is the country director of CARE. He was the immediate past country director of Plan International, and one time director of Action Aid. He's a passionate person, passionate about social justice and committed to human and environmental development. Welcome, Dr. Abdu. I can see Dr. Kole Shetima in the house. Kole Shetima is the chairperson of today's policy dialogue. Dr. Kole is the Africa Director of MacArthur Foundation. He is the moderator of today's policy dialogue. I know that this discussion is going to be engaging. And on this note, I like to formally call usher in my director. Our director of leadership is also here. Is going to be formally welcoming us to today's policy dialogue. Join me, welcome Dr. Messi Emenike. Dr. Messi, sir.
thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Doctor. You're welcome.
Thank you. We just want to give a small welcome address that will cover all the aspects of the program this morning. I'm pleased to welcome you to this policy dialogue tagged Nigeria and the political leadership needed for 2023, organized by the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, CENTER-LSD. The African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, CENTER-LSD, is a leading national non-governmental organization and think tank in Nigeria registered to build strategic leadership for sustainable development in Africa. The center's mission is to work with forces of positive change to empower citizens to transform society. The center carries out its programs through research, capacity building, advocacy campaigns built on the principles of catalytic partnership and right-based approach. The center is guided by the rules of transparency and accountability, integrity, feminism, diversity, dignity of the human person, and Pan-Africanism. The policy dialogue is a platform created to examine the content of public policy and the institutions that implement them. The first dialogue centered on the Nigeria National Social Investment Program and the impact of COVID-19, lessons, challenges, and the way forward. In this dialogue, focus is on the general situation in the country as we progress towards the election year 2023, looking at the several challenges the country is grappling with, including increase in the general price level, worsening poverty statistics, unemployment, deteriorating standard of living, terrorism, and a whole lot of other issues. Specifically, the objectives of the policy will include to improve interaction between researchers, civil society activists, policy makers, private sector entities, and practitioners. Also to promote evidence-based pro-poor policy processes and practices. The policy dialogue will bring together researchers, civil society experts, policy makers, and practitioners to improve the policy process and practice and address the problems confronting the African continent, especially governance, poverty, and underdevelopment. Political leadership is crucial for the development of nations. The progress, development, and fortunes of many nations are tied to the type and quality of political leadership that they have had and continue to have. Several scholars have argued that the greatest problem confronting Africa is the political condition, underscoring the importance of political leadership. According to Claude Ake, political conditions in Africa are the greatest impediment to development. Since independence, Nigeria has had challenges with political leadership. In 2023, there is an opportunity for a new political leader for the country. What kind of political leader does Nigeria need in 2023? What kind of conceptual, technical, and social skills should he or she have? What kind of education and exposure should she or he have? What kind of ideology should she or he espouse? What role should citizens play to have the kind of leader they deserve? Therefore, the dialogue will not only be diagnostic of the problems, but will also offer stakeholders opportunity to interrogate happenings in the country's political journey and profile solutions to them. As we collectively embark on this reflection and interrogation journey, I urge all of us to be open and frank in our contributions so that the concrete idea that could help put things in perspective and change the narrative for the better will emerge from this dialogue. As you are aware, the dialogue shall be moderated by one of our mentors and supporter in the sector, Dr. Kole Shotima. We thank him for remaining an apostle of change. I also thank the keynote speaker, Abdul Hussaini, panelists including Charles Hussein, Hidayat Hassan, Victoria Ibezimo-Heri, and Tony Chiwajuku. We are confident that you will, as usual, give the dialogue your best. I thank our founding executive director, Dr. Tive Iguzo, for his support and encouragement, and the entire staff of CENTER-LSD for their hard work. I welcome you all and wish all of us fruitful dedication. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emenike Umesi. Thank you for that welcome remark. I'd like to quickly call on Dr. Kole Shotima, who is the chair of today's policy dialogue, to please give his remark. Dr. Kolisa.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone, and thank once again to the center for inviting me to chair this occasion, which, as usual, I think OTIP drafted me to this event, despite my kicking and screaming and all the things that I protested and other things. But because he's a Pentecostal and not a Protestant, so he doesn't respect the rights of.
They are the same.
Oh, are they the same? So,
yes,
but
Pentecostals are Protestants.
Oh, okay. Sorry about sorry. Thank you for.
What a special brand of Protestant.
Okay. So anyway, thank you for the correction, because Husseini being a Salafist, he knows their own brands. They are the branch of the Protestant movement, so he knows the background of all the things that they all believe in things. But on the most serious note, thank you very much for the invitation to chair this very important and critical conversation, which we have, I think, brought together eminent personalities who are very well versed in this area of work. Of course, our Husseini, who is going to be our keynote speaker, and then we have the other other commentators who are equally qualified to give to comment on what Hussein is going to present. The subject matter, I think, is critical and very important as well. So when OTIP asked me, and I said, what is the topic again? He said, the leadership that we want in 2023. Then I said, will there be 2023? I thought that's the first question that you have to ask before you jump to the conclusion as to the kind of leadership that we want at 2023 time and point. So I think for me, I think that the issue of agenda setting, the question of questioning our systems and our perspectives about the kind of future that we want, I think that is a very critical part of the conversation that we should have as the people, as citizens of this country, because this is a very important, I think, part of the conversation that we should have. I am always intrigued by the fact that, you know, in this country, whenever election cycle is coming, I think what dominates the whole conversation is more about the individuals and the personalities that want to jump into the fray and want to do what they want to do. But the vision and the conception of what we want to do is never the issue that is at the forefront. So, but I think that by first of all defining what we want, the agenda that we want to set for ourselves, I think that should be the starting point, so that others whoever who emerges in that process then can hopefully do better than just saying, oh, I want to be the president of this country, without sharing some of the big picture that the person wants to do in other things. I'm also fortunate to be in the leadership school, so I teach a course there on vision and leadership. And one of the things that I always challenge the group is always to think about the previous Nigerian leaders and the current ones, and I try to remind them that look, you know, if you think about at least the three of the people who we claim to be the founding fathers of the nation, every one of them has written something in their life. They have articulated some ideas. There are books that you can read about them. There are some perspective that they stand for. Even just by mentioning their name, you know where they stand for and other things. And I think that to some extent also that was the case in terms of some of the people who wanted to be our presidents in 1979. But since that time, really, we never knew what were the perspectives of the others, what were their views, you know, whether they have written anything for us to learn know, to get a sense of what are they going to do for the country, apart from being actually, I want to be the president of the country, which probably the major thing that they do. So all these ideas of what you may call accidental presidents that emerge, where even the last minute we really don't know who these people are, therefore also makes it even impossible for us to interrogate what it is that they really stand for and other things. Unlike other parts of the world, where, as we know, before a person even begins to imagine to be the president of the country or so, at least the person has written one or two things. Even Sarah Palin, who was one of the mavericks that emerged in the process, she rushed to write something so that people could think about what she wanted to do for the country, so that we could define. So I'm hoping that that is where we should be really be thinking about as a people, as a country, so that we know what those people who call themselves our leaders actually, or who wants to aspire to be the leadership of the country, really want for the country, so that we can define what they want in our things. And this does not necessarily mean that we should necessarily forget about whether they are from which ethnic group they come from, or which religion they come from, or whichever. I think these are important markers, our own political reality that we can. But that does not really mean that those people cannot also say something or cannot write something that will be useful for us as a people, as a country, and other things. So I'm very excited, very happy that we are having this policy dialogue. And I think that as we are thinking about the big vision and other things, I think that maybe we should also be subsequently be thinking about the smaller pockets of ideas, pockets of issues that probably we should also be interrogating. And I hope that once we also begin to get a sense of who are the people who are aspiring to lead us, I hope that we'll also have an opportunity to bring them to a forum like this, so that they will be able to, so that they can come and share their own perspectives about what they want to do, and artists and people and citizens will have an opportunity to ask questions and other things. Some of you may recall that in the preparation for the 2019 general election, presidential election in particular, we supported a number of programs that brought together some of the presidential candidates to come and talk about what they want to do and what they want support in our things. And I think that probably that was, for us, I think that was one of the best opportunities that Nigerians had to actually ask questions and hear the perspectives of the people and get a sense of what these people stand for and other things. Of course, the foundation, when it was turn of PDP, everyone I think was accusing us of PDP supporters. When it was APC, they said, "Oh, we are the other party supporters." I mean, these are things that comes with the territory that you always deal with kind of things. But the one that I thought I should also plug up is the one that we really supported in the House of Service of the BBC, which is called Pada Chika, which is like pay and act or something like that, which actually interviewed the governors, did a series of gubernatorial candidates in town hall meetings. And what they did was to actually follow up with those gubernatorial candidates when they were elected as governors as well. And I think all the things that they promised, that they said they were doing, and all the things that they said they want to do in other things, I think they reflected back to them. They brought some of the constituency members and asked them, have this been done, have not been done? And I think that, some of them, they did what they said they didn't, they said they promised to do. Others, of course, they never did. And but the good thing was that many of them also were reminded about them and actually followed up later on to fulfill what they promised that they were going to do and other things. So which was, I thought was very, very interesting things and other things. And I also want to give kudos to the governors in those states who were willing to be asked questions about what they promised to do. and they were shown their own records in terms of whether they actually have done what they are supposed to do or not. And they were willing to come on the radio and say, look, yes, I have done this, I have not done this, but I'm going to promise to do this and other things, which I thought was excellent and other things. So for example, I think we have the first person with disability appointed as in the cabinet of Sokoto State as the result of the program. We had, I think that the National Health Insurance Program implemented in Zamfara State as a result of the program, because the governor was asked about that one. There was a road that was supposed to be constructed from in Jigawa State, from Gopaja to Duse or something that never happened before, but that one also happened as well. So I think that really holding our political leaders accountable, responsible in our things. And of course, the Kaduna State governor was the first one as expected to say, yes, I'm going to appear before the program. And they asked him several questions, and some of them he did, some of them done. And I think one of the major things was really the implementation of the medical health and health services for mothers and under 5. That was one of the major things that he did. So I think that we need to be holding our leaders accountable. We need to set the agenda for our leaders so that they can can hear what Nigerians want. And I think that that this conversation, I think, is critically important. And as we're looking at the big picture of the whole country and others, I think we should also be thinking about whether there are opportunities for us to look at smaller issues, let's say on education. What is the difference between X, Y, and Z on education? On road and on whatever, and then how do we follow up with those people so that people will be able to be held accountable for what they do and other things. Now, OTIP as the chief of staff to the deputy president, I think that he's in a very good position to do some of this work that I think is critical and very important in the work of the liaison. So I'm sure that we'll start from Delta State when we are going to do this kind of work, so that the Center LSD will also hold its own leaders accountable for all the promises they make in this process as well. So let me end by once again thanking our guest speaker, our panelists who have agreed to be part of this conversation, and of course, everyone who have also taken the time to join in this very important conversation. OTIP has agreed that that politically he's my senior, since I've never come staff. He's the right person to actually continue chairing this occasion. So I will cede the chair to him so that he can continue be the chair of the occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Colley. Thank you for laying this foundation for the discussion for today. I think my work here is done. I'm going to be handing over to Dr. Otive. Dr. Otive is going to be taking us from this part to the end of the policy dialogue. Dr. Otive, sir.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Colley. I think that Colley has actually started giving a picture of the kind of leader we need in 2023. He talked about the fact that in order to climb, the person should have written a book, must be ready to be held accountable. And he also talked about the role of the media and citizens in holding elected leaders accountable. Without wasting much time, let me call on the guest speaker, somebody that does not need any further introduction. He has been a scholar, an activist, and well-known, the country director of CARE. Let's welcome the guest speaker, Dr. Hussaini Abdul. Hussaini, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Otive, and thanks so much, Dr. Colley. Thank you for inviting me to lead this very important conversation at this very important time. unlike Kole, I think I must appreciate that the Center LSD or TB did not ambush me this time around. I was given ample notice, I think more than a month, which is very unusual. So I thank Center LSD. It probably proves that this is a very important conversation and therefore wanted to give me time to probably prepare for this. I'm not sure I have taken that, made a very good use of that time. But once again, colleagues on the panel, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to join others to welcome you. And I've been asked to lead a discussion on Nigeria and the political leadership needed for 2023. And I decided to just say 2023 and beyond. Probably I share the colleagues' concerns on whether we're going to have 2023 or not. But why not? We'll continue to hope that we get the necessary stability that we allow us continue this democratic journey. But mainly, I start by looking at some of our key contextual issues that defines us today in relations to leadership. And then from there, I try to look at the changing dynamics of the context of the country and the kind of leadership it calls for. And then I looked at what exactly do Nigeria wants to see from their leaders, from where I sit, and then began to examine some of the key attributes associated with that. But contextually, let's look at this. I want to believe that leadership has always been at the core of every social organization, whether it is human or non-human, including animals' world. Leadership has always been very core. That capacity to organize, to undertake tasks and ensure results are not, they don't actually happen just by happenstance, by coincidence, but they are deliberate processes of visioning and driving for results. So you don't just set yourself and expect things to just work. This reality has always informed human response to their environment and even their social structure, including some of those things that today we classify, we see as metaphysics, the whole conceptions of religion and the creation and all that. I don't really want to bore, I think we shouldn't bore these conversations with some conceptual concerns, but we must recognize that leadership embodies vision, courage, social and political engineering, and palpable results. So result is ultimately the end game, it's what we look for. So who is a leader and whether leaders are born or made has been a major philosophical question from Aristotle to Otive in modern times. I don't know, probably that's what they do in Center LSD. It's still part of that debate on how do we get the right leader. However, the consensus is that leadership is at the core of every organization, whether it's a family or it is a state. The family level, you still, the shape of the family and what you see is largely informed by the character of the leadership there as well. Nigeria's leadership challenge has been a very historical one, and I think Kole had tried to paint that picture very much earlier. Behind all the contentions around the forms or structure of government, social, economic, and political challenges has been a fundamental issue of leadership. It is probably in this context of that fundamental nature and the historical character of it that Chinua Achebe, and widely quoted, of course, in the literature, Chinua Achebe came up with then like an hypothesis, but I want to believe that it has become more like a theory here, that in his that little pamphlet he called The Trouble with Nigeria. It may surprise you that this pamphlet was written in 1983. And one of the key opening statements, the opening statement of that pamphlet by Chinua Achebe was that in The Trouble with Nigeria, he said, the first paragraph, that the trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. There is nothing basically wrong with the Nigerian character. there is nothing wrong with the Nigerian land or climate or air or anything else. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, the challenge of personal example. This is the opening paragraph of Chinua Achebe's The Trouble with Nigeria, and this was written in 1983. So you can see the distance, that the historical connections in terms of the challenge we face as a country, and you'll be seeing that as we progress. It's becoming increasingly clear that Nigeria needs a radical leadership capability shift to progress in the context of a more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguity associated with the country in recent times. We must see leadership differently and find ways to develop leaders differently. It is trite for me to say that Nigeria has historically been utterly, and I think this is for me the key issue, lacking in the kind of visionary, upstanding, and courageous leaders who are capable of meeting the increasingly complex challenges the country is facing while serving as inspiration to the people. And you know, I think I've mentioned this to Kole before, or Kotive, that one of my pastimes in recent time is reading old literatures and spending time reading archival documents. And I've enjoyed it in the last 2 years, to be very honest, because I found that our works, discussions have become deeply repetitive, and I go back sometimes to periods under colonial rule, before independence and all that, to see what were the conversations at that time. And I think the last 2 years have been years of learning, a lot of learnings for me in terms of what did transpire in the history of this country. And one of the materials I had access to, and I don't know whether some of the colleagues in this program today have stumbled on that, but I have stumbled on this particular journal article written in 1958. That's about 2 years before Nigeria's independence. The article was written by H.H. Smith, and it was published in the Social Research Journal, volume 25, number 2, and published by Johns Hopkins University Press. And the article was titled, "The Problem of National Leadership in Nigeria." I want to believe that these were some of those commissioned articles by American government at the wheel of Nigeria's independence, trying to understand the nature of the country. At that time, the biggest African countries to emerge was 2 years before the independence. So reading through, it's a 13-page article, and reading through that article, it read more like it was written yesterday. And this was 1952. When you remove the principal characters in the article and replace them with our current actors, you will have a fresh and compelling article on leadership in Nigeria. And that's quite unbelievable for me. I'm trying to say that, okay, after over 60 years of this, you mean we haven't made any progress? Look, Smith, and I'm referring to this article, the author, Smith, while x-raying the challenges of nation building and political contention in Nigeria, he argues that, look, and I'm quoting him now, much difficulty of understanding leadership in Nigeria stems from the fact that even today means 1952, the year he wrote the article, the territory is still, in a sense, 3 separate nations. Maybe today we can say, and I'm just adding here, we can say maybe 4 nations, depending on how you want to see it, or 6 or 36. It depends on where you sit. But Smith continued, each at a different stage of development. And that political friction of real political friction exists across this amongst these three entities. In addition, there is no really national party in the country, and hence no national leadership. The two regions of the country's southern part, that's Western and the Eastern region, are further advanced than the North, which is larger than the two southern areas combined. This was his opening in terms of understanding the whole challenges of leadership in the country. So after analyzing the leadership crisis, including examining 4 different political leaders of that time, he took time to analyze them, from Zik, who was the oldest according to him, and he was 54 years at the time, to Awo, to Ahmadu Bello, and then to Malam Aminu Kano. He analyzed each of them, their leadership capacity, traits, and weaknesses. So Smith came to a conclusion that, and I quote him, "It is obvious that Nigeria today, as it hopes for freedom and independence from Great Britain, must find leadership that can overcome the disunity and fractionalization that has pictured present and weighed the country into a, picture the fractionalization that he presented and weighed the country into a composite whole. It needs a person who can attract a national following, one in whom Nigeria of every description can trust and believe, yet who can assuage the fears of the powerful competing individual and satisfy their individual drives for prestige, position, and authority." This was the kind of leader that Smith concluded after analyzing our political context in 1958. It is almost 61 years. Nigeria has yet to find such a leader. I'll be coming back to Smith later as we progress in this conversation. But again, I think we are having this discussion in the context of our democracy and our leadership and our democratic journey. And like Holly mentioned earlier, Nigeria transited to democracy in 1999. Some of us like to say we transited to civil rule, whatever is a rule without the military being at the top or the hem of the affairs, whatever you call it. But we got into this with tremendous hope and trepidations. Hope that after all the struggles, after the years of military mismanagement of the country, we think that this country was heading for better. But we are also full of trepidation about, and we are very concerned about the process, about the history of the past, and how democracy can easily be truncated by the military. But remarkably, I think we've done 21 years in this government, the longest spell we have ever had in our political history as a country, knowing that previous experiments were short-lived, and the longest was probably 6 years. And so we've broken all the records of our political history. We've had a transition, civilian to civilian transition in 2007, and also in 2015. We've exchanged, one party has taken over from another party. These were important milestones in our democratic journey, and of course, we've been able to attain that. So obviously, the First Republic came with a lot of national and international expectations, but we must recognize also that it came almost at the tail end of what Samuel Huntington likes to describe as the third wave of democratization in the 20th century. That the tail end of that democratic triumphalism, where liberal democracy was celebrated as the end of history, to use Fukuyama's expressions around that. There is the end of history, that this is the best, and we have reached that best. That's at that moment that Nigeria's transition occurred. Periods after that was a recession of democracy and all the conversations around that. So the major challenge that this democracy journey had experienced is the challenge of leadership, which, like I mentioned, been very, very historical, and that the democracy had not been able to transform that leadership capacity that the country requires. To be sure, almost all the leaders that have emerged at the national level since the return of democracy have come with that posture of the right leaders. And almost all of them were celebrated by their leaders. We need to be very honest with ourselves, because that will allow us to actually understand where the problem is. All of them. They were all driven largely by either, this is my own understanding, either by residual militarism or a messianic complex, or both. Obasanjo was God sent, in quote, militarist, philosopher, king, and the Messiah. That was how you saw it. I don't know how many of us, some of us were involved. I don't know how many of you have read this Animal Called Man. And then Goodluck Jonathan I skipped Eradua because, again, the regime was short-lived, and of course haven't been able to do a proper profiling and reach the simple conclusions around him. But I know he was a governor for 8 years before he became a president, and for just about 3 years. But Goodluck was seen more as a humble, God-sent angel who was out to provide a breath of fresh air to Nigeria. And Buhari, more like a medieval populist with messianic complex, here to cleanse the country of corruption and guarantee security. And this is what we saw. And in each of them, we can't really find the exact quality of leadership required for the complexity of contemporary Nigeria. Understandably, politicians are more interested in power than democracy or quality leadership. Democracy, democratic institution processes are only means to access and sustain power. They respect them, follow them only as a means of accessing, ascending, and sustaining their power. They are easily pushed aside when they become obstacle to their political and economic interests. Sometimes when you look at the character and you look at the challenges of leadership in the country, you begin to worry whether we haven't probably reached the end of the game, the end of the road on this journey. But who am I? I think we need to keep our optimism high, but probably because some of us have seen this country, you've seen, you ferret it and probably have read it, relate with it and understands it better. It gives you more concerns and more worries. So let's look at it. What are the changing dynamics? What is changing in our context and the dynamics of leadership? And this will help us understand what kind of things we should be looking at. The dynamics of leadership and the context is changing around the world. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria alone, but we are trying to look at the Nigerian context. And I look at some 6 very important changes. One is that globally, we're already experiencing diminishing quality of leadership against the increasing global challenge. You take this to the war and the interwar periods of this world, First World War, Second World Wars, and the immediate periods after that, and the kind of global leadership, including leadership in our kind of country, you may probably begin to feel what the differences are. There's a deepening complexity of national challenges, and we'll be looking at that. Globalization and the rapidity of change around us. The whole challenge of media and the critical and sometimes cynical citizenry. And then the changing structure of leadership, that the leadership structure generally is also changing. So globally, leadership has become a major issue. Hardly are we seeing leaders becoming more rallying ground for national development or national and international development. Leaders we celebrate today are those who have developed authoritarian hold on their people, even if they have been able to improve the socio-economic lives. But the socio-economic life, whether it's the example, and I'm just using Nigerian social media platforms and the kind of discussions Nigerians have about the kind of leaders they want. Ida is a monitor of social media, probably she has more to add on this. One is about Dubai, and what Dubai has become, or it's about China and what China has become, or they tell you about Rwanda of Kagame's Rwanda and what Rwanda had become. And then the crisis point is that, Nigeria or South African, and how they are diminishing in capacity and leadership and all that. And so we celebrate those places. And so they are no rallying leaders in most part of the world. Where they appear more populist, and some of them actually right-wing populist. Until recently, you take Trump in America, for instance, or even Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, or even our own context here. That's what you see, right wing, and not open to everyone, divisive and order. The second one is this deepening complexity of our national challenges. While Nigeria's leadership challenge has remained the same, hasn't changed fundamentally, we have to acknowledge that the world has also changed significantly, and that being a leader today, and I'm saying it with all sense of responsibility, being the leader today is probably more difficult than it used to be. Having real vision and courage to implement things simply does not just cut in modern time. The challenges of our leaders face are much more complex and difficult. Even though Nigeria's past challenges are still there as a country, and I've just read out some quotes from 1958, and in fact, some of these challenges are escalating. We are also faced with additional challenge. The list and obstacles that we need to avoid and the leaders need to take care of. And these challenges are are enough to shock and undermine leadership. And in fact, of the most strongest person, probably because the person did not take note of it or is not prepared for it. Part of this is this whole globalization and rapidity of change around the world. Through information and communication technology, everything appears to be moving faster and becoming even more transparent, in quote. Our world is being refashioned by the impacts of globalization, digital revolution, climate change, and the increasing aspiration of the ever-expanding youth population, terrorism, text for change. Everybody wants change. The growing needs of our communities, a lot are changing, and the speed of the change is just huge and massive, even for the strongest leader. And then the media, particularly the critical and even sometimes cynical citizenry, the democratization of the media environment is posing a further challenge. Just check about this. Just a few years ago, you have only one national television station in Nigeria, which was NTA, with all the branches at the state. The central government can regulate, or had always regulated, what comes out of NTA. Then you have some zonal or regional broadcast stations under one umbrella, Federal Radio Corporations. And then you have a few states with state televisions or state radio. Everything, the media was largely owned by the state. The newspapers, there were more state-owned newspapers than there were private newspaper outfit or independent newspaper outfits. But today, this whole environment has not only been liberalized, with even more private or independent stations far beyond what the government owns. And control of what comes out of them is increasingly becoming difficult, if as much as the government tries. But even the most important one was the social media space. So a lot has happened in our
It appears we have lost Hussaini.
I think so too.
No signal at all.
I'm sure he will rejoin. Let's just give him some time to rejoin. But Hussaini has raised a lot of issues. Yeah, he's back.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I think I just lost connections briefly. I was talking about the whole media lab. It was at that point that I lost my connections. I'm basically what I was painting out there is that the media landscape has changed significantly, and even the strongest of a leader will actually shiver in face of the growing engagement that we are seeing around our media landscape. And so it requires a different kind of leadership. And the leadership has also changed, the character of leadership. A lot of decentralization had happened. That vertical, paternalistic, top-down kind of leadership is giving ways to a more decentralized leadership at different levels. Civil society, trade union, political parties, state governments, there are different ethnic, religious, regional platforms are there. And that no one appears, even when institutionally provided, seems to be having that strong totalistic hold of the country. Therefore, leadership now means you must devise means of engaging people, of welding these disparate groups together, inspiring them, persuading them, cajoling them to some extent, and even getting things done. So that, for me, are some of these changes that we've seen. So with these changes on the structure and the landscape, what do Nigerians want from their leaders? So when we discuss leadership, we have to be context specific. There is no one size fits all structure or approach to leadership. Every leader or leadership opportunity provides for context specific challenges. These challenges could be similar to others, and therefore cross-learning could take place. Nevertheless, there are also important values that should be shared by all leaders, but actions and approaches may significantly differ. Because Nigeria is deeply challenged by chains of social, economic, and political challenges, there are huge leadership expectations from Nigerians, and this has been historical, and I mentioned that earlier. These have always been the case. Each time leadership is changing, Nigerians build huge expectations and hope, and they build expectation and hope. And for me, therefore, they get easily disappointed. Of course, it is not their fault, because politicians will always promise what obviously they know cannot be met. But these challenges create certain expectations from leaders. And generally speaking, out there, monitoring the media, hearing what Nigerians are saying, Nigerians are looking for a leader that we provide new value, give them value-based kind of leadership. Something like the power of personal examples. They want that leader that will strengthen national diversity and develop power, whether it's restructuring and people are talking about, or equitable management of national resources. They call them different names. They want a leader that will respond to their insecurity. They want to, the one that will unlock their real and untapped potential. The one that will give them initiative for real progress, deal with issues of poverty, corruption, inequality, albeit without any forms of difficulty to the citizenry. They want that, but sure, they don't also want difficulty of any type. And we must recognize that. And therefore, how do leaders deal with these issues? So within this context and that leadership expectations, what are the key attributes of leaders we should be looking at for 2023 and beyond? At the moment, and I think Kole did put this on the table earlier, the debate on leadership has been both geographical, demographic, ethnic, and religious. It is more like which zone is going to produce the next leader. Next leader should come from which generation, meaning age category and whatever, or which ethnic group or which religious group is going to produce the next president or governor or whatever. That's the nature of the conversations we're seeing in the public domain. I don't, like also Kole mentioned, I don't want to dismiss these issues. They are very important in our context because of our national diversity. And I must start by clearly stating that I believe that the next leader of this country at the national level to come from the southern part of the country. I believe that very strongly. And even if I want to come down, I could also say that that next leader should probably not even be a Muslim. I could say that, but I also know that there are strong contenders across, and I don't want to create any impression around this. But I'm saying it in the context of our big national diversities, and these diversities are largely ethno-religious, and it is very important that we always consider those things in how power is distributed and shared. It may sound very bourgeois in thinking, but the reality actually is that we have challenges as a country, and one of the best way to do, even the most advanced societies are doing that. In Switzerland, you could have up to 5 different presidents with concurrent powers, all representing different cantons. And forget about the name cantons. They are actually ethnic. They are German Swiss, they are Swiss Swiss, they are Flemish Swiss, they are French Swiss. They're just basically ethnic. They don't just calling it by that name. So every society must actually find that conversational means of managing its diversity. I'm a strong believer in that. But beyond that, the diversity issues, there are also very important factors that we must consider. I believe that the best of this attribute, or the attribute that we may share, can be found in every ethnic group, in every part of this country. They can be found. So no country, no segment of the country is devoid of those kind of quality that we'll probably be looking for. But I don't want to sound prescriptive, and that's very, very important. I know Nigerians are desperately waiting for another kind of leader that will, even while managing diversity, will eradicate incompetence and mediocrity, develop a culture of excellence and efficiency for the benefit of the people. This will mean a more national use of skills that exist by putting the right men and women in the right positions to achieve the shared vision of that leadership or even the country. So for me, one, because part of it is part of my own understanding of the kind of leader. Part of some of these issues have to do with the values that the person espouse, the issue the person stands for, and then the ideology that the person shares. And I'll be taking them one after the other. On the ideological realm, I actually think that what this country needs is a democratic developmental state. A democracy, one, but that democracy that is very committed to development, that the activities of the state, of the government is channeled, is towards development. The democracy has been generally, for me, and Nigeria in particular, been associated with liberal political and economic ideology. Sometimes I hear some of our public affairs commentators saying that the country is lacking, or our politicians or political parties are lacking in ideology. But my argument has always been that they are actually not lacking in ideology. They do have an ideology, and all of them share the same ideology, which is actually very liberal ideology. And because they share ideology, we don't have, the challenge we have, there is no alternative ideology on the table. That's for me what the issue are. So there is no alternative, something different from what we have in the mainstream, or that the mainstream politicians hold on. And for me, ideology, that commitment, that passionate courage and channel is one of the most important things in leadership. And that's what we should be looking out for. Nigeria has experimented with neoliberal economic frameworks that flatly. We're experiencing growing poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This has nothing to do with the regime, but system. Even when the GDP of this country was growing at 7 to 8%, unemployment was increasing, poverty was on the range, and inequality was deepening. Nigerians need a new approach to managing its politics and economy, and the state has an important role to play. So our new leader, what has been the position of this leader in this conversation? That is very important, that the leader must be a strong believer in the democratic developmental state. Second one for me, in terms of the ideological distinction, is that the leader must be committed to radical social economic reorganization. Our new generation of leadership must be anchored on social reality, on the social reality of the people, and work to have positive changes to their social economic situation. As far back as 1983, in this same Achebe's note that I quoted earlier, Achebe was very clear in that. He said a leader's non-nonsense reputation, and I'm sure you can relate with it. He said a leader's non-nonsense reputation might induce a favorable climate. But in order to effect lasting change, it must be followed up with a radical program of social economic reorganization, or at least a well-conceived and consistent agenda of reform, which Nigeria stand, and in their need of. So no matter, because I hear Nigerians say, we need a ruthless leader. We need a strong leader. For me, no matter how ruthless this person is, he can't sustain the ruthlessness and support of the people until he is able to connect that with a strong, radical social economic reorganization that is designed in favor of the people. And then our next leader must not only be a nation builder, he must also be a state builder. What has been the commitment of this person all this while? What has been the role of that person in both, not just nation building, but in state building? My own contention on this matter is that democracy generally survives on the weight of the state and society. The capacity of the state has been weakened, and I mentioned this earlier, even before at the point of transition. The Nigerian state has been badly weakened and captured. And practically today, it cannot provide anything: security, education, health, roads, practically nothing. Even when it occasionally provides some of these things, the claim to them are privatized. They are claimed by individual politicians, and all the celebrations around them as if they use their personal resources to provide them. So even when we try to reform, in recent time, it is often that paradox of reconstructing state institutions without considering the social political cohesion of the country. So all the reforms that we have had since 1999 have been directed as the state. In some occasions, the state even gets further weakened by that process, because we believe this whole have, technocratic consumption that the best people will get more technocrats. I'm not a fan of that. I really think that if any technocrat wants to play a very important role in government, he should go into politics. Because the politics will help discipline this technocrat to appreciate people and recognize the needs of the people and be more engaging rather than actually sleeping in his technocratic hole and believing that governance or leadership is mathematics, where 2 + 2 = 4. It is beyond that when you are dealing with people and dealing with society. And therefore, whatever we need to do is to connect nation building and state building. And what's the difference between these two? I'm drawing from this sociological understanding of a modern nation state. People believe because we say nation state, then it is the same. I agree that it is impossible to consider state building as a separate process.
Hussaini, can you round up in 10 minutes?
I'll try.
Okay.
While I agree that they should go hand in hand, I believe consciously or unconsciously, prioritizing one against the other poses a huge challenge for the country, and this has been our challenge. State building is generally associated with institutional approach, the message of strong institution, or what we always say, strong institution, not strong men. That Obama's mantra. I actually think we need both, because institutions don't make themselves. People do them. And institutions don't sustain themselves. People do. So we need the person, we need the driver who understands the need for those institutions and work to sustain and drive those institutions. We have seen institutions being weakened, strong institutions that we think are strong being weakened by a bad leadership. And we've also seen good leadership creating strong institutions. For me, this is what I think we should be looking at. Somebody who is ready to build a state and who is also prepared to put this country together, recognizing our diversity, believing that every segment of this country has a very important role to play in the development of the country, and that no segment of the country should be left behind. No citizen should actually be left behind in development impact. So in 2023 and beyond, we need a leader who appreciates these differences and ready to handle them jointly and differently, all the reforms, infrastructure, institutions, without corresponding investment in the people and building a sense of purpose, shared destiny, and collective imagination will fail. We need a leader who will actually manage our diversity. Nigeria needs someone who is, or people who are conscious of our diversity and ready to manage it as part of our nation building process. He must be capable of uniting the different segments of the country into a functioning whole. He needs to know how to allay the fears of the different ethnic and religious group and political formation, take care of the interests of the mass, the poor, business class, accommodate the criticism and the cynicism of even our new tech-savvy young generations of Nigeria. We need someone who has historically been humble in face of national crisis. But here, this is my own conception of humility. It's not about personal courage, as important as that is. It is more about how it reflects on your leadership. You may be humble, probably maybe timid, because sometimes they are two different things. Timidity is different, it's almost very close to humility at the personal level. But here, what we're looking for is that humility. The new leadership must have the courage to tell the truth to the state and state the facts and give honest voice to the difficulties of the present and those of the future. I don't know how many of us have come across this, and this is very important. I just finished reading a very brilliant book written by Jared Diamond on what he called upheavals, how nations cope with crisis. It was published in 2019. And it was providing some clear messaging in terms of how nations can recover from crisis and the importance of leadership in that process. And some of the key elements coming out from there is about humility of a leader. And one of them is national consensus that one's nation is in crisis. We must agree that we are in crisis. At this moment, I'm not seeing that from our leadership, recognizing that we are in crisis. The second is that acceptance, national responsibility to do something about it, that we must collectively agree that we need to do something about this. And then we build a fence, meaning to delineate that problem so that it doesn't permeate other segments. Delineate it and face it. And then you prepare yourself in getting material and financial or whatever support from others. You recognize that you may not be able to do this alone. And then you use other nations as a model. So these are elements that actually have to do with leadership humility. The next is that we need a techno-conscious and engaging leader. Not all leaders can be technology savvy. I recognize that. But they can be technology conscious, meaning recognizing the power of information and communication technology and actively engage the citizens through that means, particularly young people and diaspora, where a growing size are now living in the cyberspace. Nigeria needs an energetic, but not a garrulous leader. Somebody who's energetic, who can jump from one place to other to solve a problem. And I always use this example. 2 or 3 years ago, when the whole crisis in Benue State was escalated, and there was this report of herders killing, massive killing of of a particular village community. And that escalated to become a huge national issue. And the whole dictates and discourse on Fulanization, whatever that means, and all that. And I said, this escalation happened because of leadership failure. And it requires 1 hour action to address this, and we failed. And what was it? The president having taken a chopper, and probably he needs 35 minutes to get to Makurdi. And he flies to Makurdi. He gets there and he drives straight to the state house and is received by the governor. And then he assembled the leaders of Benue, different political parties, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and he addressed them and make strong commitment that, look, this country will not tolerate this level of carnage, and that this is going to be the last time we are going to be seeing this. Probably the reaction of the country, the reaction of the media, the reaction of the people of Benue State will probably be very different. And that's the failure, the lack of energy. The president was probably in Kankara, in his own state, in Katsina, when these young people were, school children were adopted. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much, actually, to just drive. Even if you cannot go to Kankara, we can understand. He's not the local government chairman, he may say that. He's not the state governor, he may say that. But he could go to Katsina from Daura, engage the people there, and make clear statements around that. And that sends a message. Leadership requires energy. Leadership requires being hands-on and being engaging. You don't need to be garrulous of the Obasanjo type, but energy is always important. And that's what we'll be looking for our leader. Commitment to gender equality is very key. This is one major challenge that this country has faced all through our democracy experience. Nigeria is embarrassingly one of the least countries in terms of women's representations. Women issues have generally been trivialized, their political participation deeply undermined. And our new leadership, the person we should be looking for as a country, 2023 and beyond, are people or leaders who commit to women's leadership and their strategic engagement. This, for me, will be a non-negotiable. We also need a conflict manager, a leader that has strong communication skill. Conflict management is an important leadership skill at all levels, including at the family level. As a country, we cannot pretend that we are not a conflict-ridden country. That's what we are. There is nothing bad in that you are conflict-ridden. Conflict and contentions are driven, are key things you experience in a diverse setting. What is important is how we are responding to it. Some of the conflict requires just simple political engagement, and they can be done very easily. Failure to address them could complicate them and even give them a new life, and even give the leadership a new identity, like what is in the public domain about the current leader, for instance. Oh, this Fulani thing, oh, it is this, oh, that is probably absolutely not true from where I sit. But again, because of the attitude, because of the failure in conflict management, perception has developed. And perception is a reality. We just need to be honest about it. The same thing was our reaction under Goodluck to Boko Haram and the kidnap of Chibok girls. The reaction to it created a new perception of the leadership. And that perception defined the leadership up to today. So you need that leadership, and you need a clear crisis communication skills. Where you don't have it, then you surely need the support. I don't believe in this attitude of our politicians recruiting journalists to be their communications people. Journalists are not communicators. They are reporters. I'm sorry, with due respect to journalists who are in this platform, I respect you. I appreciate the work we are doing as reporters. And we need you. We need that media environment. I appreciate that. But not all journalists are crisis communicators. And again, we don't need PRs. We don't need PR people. We need crisis communications, people who understand the strategic nature of crisis and can explore opportunity within it and use communication to also address the crisis. That's it. They can support the leaders in delivering that. And so we must be going for a leader who is open to this, who recognizes the power of communication in crisis management. We also need a leader who has a long history of commitment to social justice. Nigeria's future leadership should believe in social justice. Social justice is the equal access, people's equal access to wealth, opportunities, services, privileges within the society. Social justice lies on 4 very key elements. 1, human rights, access, participation, and equality. Who is that leader? The leader we are looking for should be someone who espouses that. Social justice cannot be achieved without these 4 principles. It's very important we have that. But for me, I spent years recruiting people. And I know when I'm recruiting, I don't recruit people who comes to tell me what they can do. All politicians will tell you what they can do. Every staff that comes or every candidate that comes for an interview for a job will tell you what he or she can do. For me, I only recruit people based on what they have done. It's based on their antecedent. They have to give me evidence of what they have done in relation to the job I'm recruiting them for. And then based on that, I'm able to say, because you have done this in the past, then it means you can do this. Or because you are doing this now, then it means you can do this. But I don't recruit on the basis of promise. I promise you I can deliver. Because I have energy, because I'm passionate, because of that. No, please, I want to have you because of what you have done in the past. And this is the attitude that I want Nigerians to seek in terms of recruiting their next leaders. How do you, every politician will have something to offer. He will always tell you what he can do. I think Nigerians should be more concerned about what that person stands for, what his antecedent is, what he has always done, and that will help us determine what that person can do it again. I think after all these rounds of leadership, Nigeria needs to be properly prepared for this. What can we do? We need to continue to engage. Platforms
it's difficult to stop you, Hussaini, but please.
Yeah, I'm done. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm rounding off. What I was just trying to say in conclusion is that there's a lot we can do as citizens, as people, to get the right kind of leadership. One, we continue to engage, just like what the kind of platform is providing, discussing leadership. We need to discuss it using every platform. Our civil society need to continue to advance this cause. raising questions, insisting that our political parties do the right thing in their leadership selection process. Leaders don't emerge from NGOs. Our national leaders don't emerge through NGO processes. They emerge through political parties. And therefore, we need to also align. We need to find good people in different political parties and continue to spread this message. And the message that Kole mentioned earlier about also getting them to be part of conversations of this nature. It is when they are in this kind of conversation that they will begin to recognize the kind of leadership they want. Believe me, these people actually live in their own world, and they don't see this other side. They are so covered by their politics and their political interests. We must be able to break that and get them to listen to us. It is only through that we can get the right leadership. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Hussaini, for that elaborate presentation. I will not attempt to summarize what you have said, but as you were saying, I was putting points on the chart. So my summary is already on the chat box. Thank you very much. I hope you'll be able to share with us the prose if it is written. I think we should circulate this more. As a center, I will commit to circulate it as much as possible. Just to let all of us know that we are streaming this workshop on Facebook, on YouTube, and a lot of people are following us and on Twitter. So let me go quickly to call the first discussant, the country director of Christian Aid, Mr. Charles Usie. Charles, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Otive, for the opportunity. Of course, it's a delight to be part of my senior colleagues, Hussaini and Dr. Kole Shetima, who I respect in the sector and have learned a lot from their tutelage over the years. Most times, I think it sometimes is good to situate and contextualize some of the issues we talk about when we talk about leadership. And if we start from that, I would want to use myself even as an example. Over the years, in leadership roles in Nigeria, some of the contributions I've made at national and state level, I would say that it is simply because I have been schooled and tutored by people like Dr. Otive, Dr. Hussaini, and many other people in the sector who have gone ahead. And if we do this, even in civil society and in other sectors, why can't we do that with our leadership in Nigeria? Why do we have leaders who jump out from any corners, and simply assume that office and tend to lead us? So there's a caveat, there's a place there for coaching. I want to just appreciate all of you for the opportunity. So I will, somebody's microphone is on. Okay. I will, Dr. Otive, I will not, I think Hussaini has covered this topic very well. I would not attempt in any way to begin to repeat what he has said. I would just want to focus on some key aspects which resonates with me, and then and leave it at that. From what Hussaini has said, we can all appreciate that Nigeria is a troubled giant. It's a country with many contradictions, and I think Hussaini has clearly established some of the challenges we face, as a country. But even from that conversation, it is clear that there is nothing Nigeria is facing or dealing with right now in terms of our leadership, deficit that cannot be overturned. For every situation that we would use, to argue Nigerians' problems, you'll find out that there are countries who have done even more, than just sitting down and complaining about their problems. The easiest examples in terms of our size and complexity are places like China and India, who in the last, maybe in the last decade or in the last maybe 2 decades have lifted over 1 billion people out of poverty. So what would be our excuse? What would be our excuse? We are not a unique set of people. We are people like, who have similar challenges, similar complexities, but they're able to deal with it. And what did they do differently? The thing is, listening to listening to Dr. Oseni, and from my own experience working on the field, one of the things I've come to understand is that in Nigeria currently, every problem we have is actually linked to some of the greatest strengths we have as a nation. So one of the biggest problems people will mention when it comes to Nigeria is our diversity. People argue that our diversity is what is making us not move forward. That's the challenge with leadership. I tend to disagree because some countries have used this same level of diversity, to make their country even better, and have progressed along the lines of their progress in terms of their development. Places like the UK and the US are quite diverse in terms of the kind of people who live there. We all know that the mayor of London, for instance, is a Muslim. Many of us would not believe that, but that is the extent to which a country has capitalized on its diversity to bring about even prosperity for its people. Some people will argue that one of the problems in Nigeria, is religion. But other countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, have capitalized on that same religion, to make it a source of prosperity for its country. Some people have argued that our numbers, is the problem. We're too big as a country, even if nobody has truly counted us. There are all estimations of 200 million people, more than 200 million people. But to be honest, I disagree with all those figures. Until a proper census is conducted, I disagree that we are 200 million people, to be honest. But whether we're 200 million people or we are 250 million or 300 million, other countries have used that same number as a source of strength. We have India and China who have used that same number as a strength. Why are we complaining, and why are we seeing this as a challenge? Finally, our creativity. People have used our creativity as a source of problem. People will argue that Nigerians are very corrupt. To be honest, a lazy, dull, stupid person cannot be corrupt. It takes a very smart, well-calculated team of people to be smart, to be corrupt. And that's why, if you look at the internet fraud, where Nigeria ranks very high, it's not a dullard who becomes an internet fraudster. It's not a stupid person who knows how to manipulate, technology, advancements, to lure people. So the question is, why have we not used all of this, to the benefit of this country to create prosperity? And so, in answering the question, what does an average person need from a leader in Nigeria? Oseni has given us a template, a blueprint, as I'll call it. But what do people need? From my experience in the field, working in places in the Northeast, in North Central, in the South, where I'm from, what do people really need in Nigeria? What do we want as Nigerians? Nigerians want the basics. They want security. They want a sense or a source of livelihood. They need opportunities, for both economic prosperity, and prosperity of every kind. And in general terms, as our development father put it, Amata said, people want some sense of freedom to be able to express themselves and actualize their dreams. And so why is this difficult for us? Why is this difficult for a leader? So as we project for 2023, what kind of leader will bring us this, this list or this menu of what we expect? I will want to instead argue that what are the things in favor of a leader who we expect, or who we would expect in 2023? There are many things that are in favor of that potential leader. Now, Dr. Oseni has sort of created a picture of the kind of leader we want, in 2023, who is devoid of nepotism, who understands the context, who is able to lead from the front with personal humility and example and all of that. But there are certain things that are on the table already in favor of whoever emerges as a leader or whoever we choose as a leader. Let me use the word choose rather than emerge. One of it is technology. I mean, the level of technology advancement in the country right now in the world, for me, is a strong tool for whatever leader that we will select, in the next election and beyond. And any leader we select, should be smart enough to take advantage of the vibrant young population. We are considered to have the most youthful population in the world. That is an asset to the potential leader that we expect in 2023. Our diversity, and our federal system in terms of our federal, state, and local government system, that is a strength, in terms of how development should reach poor people. And then the vibrancy of our private sector, and even the progressive nature of our religious institutions, who are considered to be the wealthiest in the world. All of these are strong indicators of how a leader would use this to the benefit of Nigerians. So what type of leader would that be? And permit me to use more like an analytical or a theoretical framework put together by Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. In his book, he argued that a level 5 leader, transformational leader, can take any organization, institution, country, nation from being good to great. And that is where we are right now. We need a leader. Many people will argue that we are not even good yet, not to talk of being great. But that is true. But this framework would actually fit into whatever kind of leader that we need to take us to the next level.
Sorry, Charles, I didn't mention it. I wanted the discussants to use 10 minutes. So
okay, let me wrap up then. Yes.
Yeah.
So in summary, what he argued was that the kind of leader we need, a transformational leader, is a leader that has 3 qualities. I will wrap up with just presenting those 3 qualities and hoping that people will get to read up more and understand what these 3 qualities are. And what he argued was that a transformational leader should have must come with three qualities. One is disciplined people. The leader must be able to build a team of disciplined people, a team of experts. No leader in itself is able to transform any nation by himself. That leader will need a team. So for me, the kind of leader we need in 2023 is a leader who is able to select the best of people, and use them, to cover the most sensitive aspects of this country to take this nation forward. From Dr. Hosseini's presentation, we hear about the different transitions in the kind of leaders that we had. And I want to just focus on the current leader we have, which is President Muhammadu Buhari, who came in his mosaic nature to deliver us for whatever it is it was. But you see, I think that has just shown us that a leader in himself, with all the qualities, with not being surrounded with a good team, is doomed to. And I think we're beginning to see that happening in Nigeria. So the first quality will be a leader who is able to select the right team, the best team, and put them in the right positions and in the most sensitive positions. So the best people should be in the most biggest opportunities and in the most high risk sectors. I think that is first, the first quality of the kind of leader we need. Secondly, a leader who comes with disciplined thought, who is disciplined in terms of the kind of change we want to see, how he communicates, how the leader is able to interrogate the challenges we face, and how the leader is able to communicate plans, and ideas back to the constituency. He or she must be able to have that interface and be able to articulate and set the agenda in terms of where we need to go as a nation. And then finally, the kind of leader we expect in 2023 and moving forward is a leader who comes with disciplined action. You must match words with the right kind of action. In this instance, I'm talking about first our reward system. If we go deep down into this conversation, we will find out that one of the challenges we have as the government and as a people is that our leaders are not to recognize people who are outstanding. And that's why many people recently have been arguing that why is it that Nigerians are excel when they are outside of the country more than when they are in the country. It's because our leaders have not been able to establish a reward system for people of outstanding quality. That is a key component and a key quality of the best kind of leader we want. And then finally, conversely, we want a leader who is able to also establish a punishment system. So when we have a good reward system, we should equally have a corresponding system that punishes, and corrects bad behavior. When these two things go together, then a leader is able to establish himself or herself as a leader with disciplined action, and then will be able to lead appropriately. I think these three qualities combined together, right people, right thoughts, and disciplined action, will be the kind of quality that will take this country, to the next level. In addition to all the things Dr. Hussaini have said, and I think I would like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles, especially for those issues about moving the country from good to great and a transformational leader with disciplined team, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. We'll move to the next discussant who will spend 10 minutes. It's a techno specialist, so you should be able to spend 10 minutes. Idayat Hassan, over to you.
Good morning, sir and colleagues. I want to effectively use my 10 minutes, so I'll dispense with all necessities, but it's very important that this is one of the best discussions I've been a part of in the last 1 year in terms of the quality, thoughts, and ideas, and it seems we are gradually getting there, really. The crisis of leadership is not just confined to Nigeria. It's a crisis that the whole world currently is actually facing, even as much as challenges continue to abound. And I think for us here in Africa, gone are those days, we talk about the Nkrumah, Ofe Boigny, Thomas Sankara, Leopold Senghor. Even just over a decade ago, we had the likes of Obasanjo, Abdoulaye Wade, even with these challenges. Here in West Africa, Nelson Mandela. But today, who can we actually even point out as a leader, aside from Kagame, in spite of his challenges? So it's a world challenge, and it's specific when it's even, we drill it down to the continent. And 21 years into the Nigerian democracy, I doubt if leadership is something, it's like it's the biggest challenge the country is currently confronting. And I think for me, what I decided to do was to ask younger people what they actually thought in terms of this topic. So I'll quickly read the first response that I got. And it's, we need a hardline political leader in Nigeria. The answer is yes, and yes, and yes. The Nigerian political system has decayed. Our major political party candidate now echo this tagline: I am here to loot for myself and my godfather. Having a hardliner leader that owns its corrupt political opposition is not a bad idea. At least we are cleaning the house. Moreover, such a leader will be compelled to sacrifice some dishonest members of his political party. Our problem has gotten bad that a new trend is emerging. Nigerian politicians are now recruiting internet scammers, home and abroad, to work as advisors. They aren't advisors, it's another ploy to siphon and launder money out of the country. This is like from a 25-year-old. And just this morning, I confirmed and sent him a link and see the State Department of State's man arrested yesterday. You are so right about this new trend. I think if time permits, I'll come back to that last trend, which I never heard of, and I'm sure many people did not know about it. This person came back and said, there are two kinds of leaders. One who lead by example, and the other who motivate others to set examples. Nigeria as a country has seen many such leaders. Obasanjo was probably the only leader who fell into both categories. He showed his resistance against corruption among his own political parties and society at large. Our ministers worked like never before. We had people like Nuhu Ribadu who championed the OBJ fight against corruption. So what kind of leader does Nigeria need now? I believe that Nigerian youth have realized the importance of a good life and a country with good governance. What Nigeria needs are leaders who can lead by example. Nigeria does not need any more motivational speakers or staged political activists screaming in every rally, asking us to wake up. The time has come for leaders of the country to step up and set a good example by showing their skills in administration, governance, economics, and science. Instead of speaking about big dreams and asking the country to vote for them, let them show us some meat. Quite interesting in terms of what these young people have come up with, what for the kind of leader do they actually want. And I think that Oseni has actually set the stage for what I actually intend to speak of, but maybe now framing it within the context of visionary, courage, skill set, which is very important because now government is more like running a business, empathy, and a cosmopolitan with a sense of duty to make things happen, not one that has got good intentions at heart, because this is the most repeated phrase when you speak to Nigerian politicians at all levels. They do have good intention, but how does this good intention translate on ground, especially in a society where people no longer want to follow? There is no more lead and follow again. And I framed it like a cosmopolitan leader. Who is a cosmopolitan leader? One who is actually able to engage, irrespective of ideas and where it comes from. The feeling, cultural affinity, a global citizen also. A global citizen, one who see within the prism of everything and will engage with people only on the quality of what they actually have, not where they come from, but what they are actually able to bring on the table. Because when you look at the challenges that we face in this country today, the lack of cosmopolitanism is actually something that continues to drive division in the last of the current administration. What are the skill sets that is actually needed for today? A hands-on to deal with global, national, regional challenges, context-specific, as in context-specific, as it actually arises. And that's part of the discussion, the characteristics or discussion from Oseni, when he talked not just about tech, but evolving challenges. Is it security? Is it tech? Is it even the threats of marginalization? Everything that affects the people. And this is important because you do not necessarily need to have all those skill sets, but the ability to actually recognize it and put a process in mission. And I think a very good example, like I got 3 good examples from Nigeria. Kindly note, they are not perfect, but they used a skill set possibly that we never knew of. One is the Kebbi State Governor. When he assumed office, he was the first person to define what the priority of the state will be, and that is agriculture, rice, a focus. He defined again partnership. He decided to go ahead and partner with Lagos in the first year. By the time they were doing the first year celebration, even by Christmas, they were showing a picture of the Ambode and of course, Atiku Bagudu eating rice, even though they were frowning, and we Lagosians were like, oh, the rice possibly did not taste good. Why should we eat the late rice? This really manifested. The third thing he did that was also fantastic, even if self-serving, was he recognized the fact that he was not going to be in the state at all times and set a motion in place such that the state could work while he lounges in Abuja. Now, a partnering governor, which also comes very important, and Sokoto comes to mind, because while Sokoto has worked and evolved even in terms of openness of their budget in the last 4 years, even though they did very bad in the last 4 years, they did very bad, but in the last 2 years, it's improved. Again, talks to partnership. But one very important partnership that came into play here was the partnership between states, religion, and tradition. And with this, they've been able to deal with the challenges of insecurity, even COVID, and development, either in the collection of the zakat, in the enforcement of COVID protocol, or making citizens their own guide, especially in the border communities in Sokoto State. Now, the third one that I think is quite fascinating for me again goes to Jigawa State, because Jigawa is instructive, especially when you look at the religious model for the model of leadership in Africa, where we talk more about Kagame, his strong rule, and Morocco, in spite of the monarchical rule, being able to get things going on the continent. And you find that with Jigawa, one thing the governor did was he modernized religion, and at the same time, he made what I called religion as also modernized religion, and also religion modernized, just like Morocco, such that there is nothing that is actually being done that they do not bring these people in, and the buy-in gets things done. They are not fantastic. They are actually challenges. They are challenges, but somehow being hands-on and recognizing skills, both of state and non-state actors, aside from special managerial skills and every other skills, have made those states to actually perform. Now, value-based leadership is quite important, and I think that one of the respondents cited Obasanjo as an example here. But what is also very important is that courage is very, very important in leadership, as it encourages high performance and it mobilizes society. How courageous are our leaders, especially where at every level, everybody thinks about the next elections or the renewal of a term and never take the responsibility or being looked at as a bad person. Then vision, especially when you look at Nigeria of today. The first thing when you speak to politicians or people in power, they say that, okay, what vision am I going to tap into? That's one of the biggest challenge. And the last year, when they come up with this new development plan, we felt maybe that could actually tap into Vision 2020, a successor of Vision 2020, but somehow we are not hearing a lot about it. But vision, a leader needs a vision that others can actually tap into. And this is a challenge that Nigeria has actually faced in the last 6 years, and an excuse for many of the governors not even to perform, or at the state level where leadership does not actually come into play the way we want. Then cosmopolitanism, I think maybe I've spoken about it. I think it is the most important at this point in time. Where are those Okonjo-Iwealas? Where are the Obasanjo? Maybe I should speak about Obasanjo, who is referred both locally and internationally, in spite of his challenges. Even a Jonathan, who was able to bring everybody on board for the skills that they actually had. And even at the end of the day, his ministers also brought the best of the best to be their essays, such that when they were kicked out of office, we could do a mapping of just the essays that got into most of the best position you can think of on the continent and out in the world itself. Now, empathy is something that we never talk about in Nigeria. We never talk about it, and we never see it to be a leadership skill. And empathy has now become a political skill. It's not just a trait, but is a skill that any politician will actually need to have. And it's the lack of empathy that has driven division, even within an ethnic grouping that we actually think of. Where the grievances you can think of talking to the Fulanis in the Northwest is the lack of empathy from us and from the leadership itself. So this is a skill that I think we have to prioritize, not just in workplace, but a very important political skill when we are talking in terms of the future.
It's difficult to stop our panelists, but
in conclusion, all these skills are very important skills that we have to bring together for anybody that will emerge as a leader in 2023 for change to happen. He or she must be a cosmopolitan that is able to bring everybody on board, irrespective of creed or religion or ethnicity. Somebody who has the right skill sets to do the work, multitask and recognize perfection to bring around the table. And that fits again into empathetic, that can actually deal with the reality on ground, engage it at every point in time in terms of what leadership actually leads. The one that defines his or her vision that Nigeria can actually buy into, and the value-based leadership that is very, very important. We do not need a leader that will actually have one and will mix four out of all these traits. And this should not just, and I think that very important, the focus should not just be on the presidency, but we should be able to, it should trickle down up to the local government, where of course, democracy defines the life of the people. I think with this, maybe life will become better, hopefully for us.
Thank you very much, Hidayat. I know that our guest speaker and all our speakers can speak for 5 hours each, but I think the summary has been very, very useful, especially the local examples and the need for empathy in leadership. So we'll go to our last, but definitely not the last panelist, not the least panelist, the Executive Director of Spaces for Change, a lawyer and activist. Let's listen to Victoria Ohere. Victoria, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Very well.
Okay, good afternoon all. I really enjoyed listening to all of the speakers and the presentations, and there are lots of important lessons to draw from. So I will just go straight to continue from what the last speaker stopped. Permit me also to stand on existing protocols for time due to time constraints. I think from the keynote tried to, based on the kind of leaders we've had in the past, explain the various leadership traits and characteristics we've had in the past. There was a reference to the God-sent behavioral trait. There was also the messianic complex. There was the humility quotient. You know, from our experiences, I think most of us here witnessed all of these leaders, whether it's Obasanjo or Goodluck or Buhari or Yar'Adua. Most of us witnessed their democratic experiment. And there is something that is emerging from the past leaders we've had. I think that is that morals, character, education, charisma, personality, they are not enough. They are not enough to make you a good leader, particularly in a heterogeneous society like Nigeria. There What else? What then is missing? Why is it that we've had a messiah, someone with a messianic complex, we've had someone with a strong humility quotient, we've had a God-sent leader, we've had the austere pattern, Spartan kind of leader. Why is it that none of these have yielded the kind of results we want to see? I draw the conclusion that, I raise the hypothesis that there needs to be in place some legal, systemic, and constitutional infrastructure in place to make somebody function effectively as a leader. And a leader in what setting? In a democracy. Then the question again is the kind of environment we live in. Is democracy the best form of government that responds to our peculiarities? What does democracy mean? What is it that needs to be in place for that leader to function effectively in a democracy? Let me just go back a bit to the meaning of democracy. Democracy, literally, it means rule by the people. It's derived from the Greek word called demokrasia. And it's, and that demokrasia is a coinage of two words. Demos means the people. Kratos means rule. And that dates back to the political systems existing then in the Greek states, I think notably Athens. So for democracy to, based on that etymological origins of the term democracy, it hints at a number of urgent problems that go far beyond semantic issues of leadership. So if a government is of the people, by the people, if that type of government is to be established, there are certain questions that must be confronted at the outset. And if those questions are confronted at the outset, it then creates an enabling environment for a real leader to emerge and function effectively. What are those kind of questions? Number one, who are the demos? The people. What is the infrastructure for the demos, the people, to participate in that type of environment? Again, another question that needs to be answered is, if the demos, the people that make up that government, if they're divided on an issue, as often as that would be, whose view should prevail? Okay, if we agree that the majority will always prevail, how should minorities sometimes be empowered to have their own interests be protected? The views of the minority sometimes are most times are legitimate and very valid. So where the views of the majority prevail, what happens to the needs and concerns of the minority? Again, what constitutes even that majority? Should it comprise of certain groups, associations, or should it be regional? Should it be territorial? So these are the kind of questions and ingredients that probably, if they are solved, when you're not bringing a messianic leader or a humble leader or a God-sent leader, not throw them into that environment, there are certain firewalls around them that prevent them from allowing their personal inadequacies to thrive over the public good. Then that takes me to what some of those things that that person needs to do, assuming that fundamental issues are addressed, which is the question of citizen leadership. What do I mean by citizen leadership? The past leaders we've had in Nigeria, I don't know whether you've noticed that once they leave office, they become advocates, they become activists. It's because they have left the superficiality of governance, and they are now mingling like normal citizens, so they can see things a bit more clearly. We all remember LBJ's letter writing habit since he left office. We all have seen Pius Anyim's, letter writing, some of his letters to the president. We all have seen sometimes Osita Chidoka's activism on social media. We also see Rocha's activism. So the question we always ask ourselves, these people have had a chance to be in government. Why some of them had 4 years, some had 8 years. Why didn't they do the things they are now preaching to the current government to do? So it is because of the absence of citizen leadership. Leaders who are in the mode of citizens, who understand, who are in tune with the social, economic, and political realities, and leaders who desire change themselves. They did not desire change because they became leaders. They were already change makers. before they assume the position of leaders. These are also the kind of leaders that have the ability to attract, retain, and connect with change makers. So where that ingredients have been, are in place, or where a leader has this type of attributes, it makes it easier for him to also become a critic of his own government. When you become a critic of your own government, it means that even if you surround yourself with yes men, you can still sometimes in your quiet moments decipher the reality from the superficiality, which your aide sometimes might present to you as the truth. Then there is also another ingredient that emerged from the keynote, which I agree with. And for a leader to fit into the mode of a citizen leader, there are certain steps that person must have gone through. And what are those steps that a citizen leader has gone through for you to say, oh, this is a citizen leader? This is not just a politician that won an election. For the first is, I agree with the fact that a leader must have written a book. You know one thing about writing? Writing exposes your inner abilities, your mental strength. You can't hide your mental strength. When people read what you write, number one, they understand your thinking, the depth of your thoughts. People can measure the rationality of even your faculties. So that is why it is important for a leader, a citizen leader, to have written something so that people can, just beyond your promises on the podium of a campaign ground, people can look back and say, these are the kind of thoughts and aspirations this person has always had. Another thing is that type of leader must have run a business or an institution before. We can't just bring somebody somewhere and just put in a position of authority. We need to look for people who have probably risen through the ranks. Somebody who has been, if before you become a CEO in a big multinational, you have probably gone through the graduate trainee program, you've gone through the managerial programs, you've gone through the directorships before you rose to the level of CEO. But if you're just brought from somewhere and put in a position of a CEO, there are bound to be, certain blunders along the way. And those are some of the cracks that we are seeing also in the national system, in our political system. Again, I also want to mention that type of leader who is a citizen leader must be a respecter of the civic space and human rights. What do you mean when you say is a respecter of the civic space? It means that the civic space, for those who don't understand that terminology, is simply the oxygen, the freedom we have for democracy to thrive. Can you all hear me, please? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yes,
I can hear you clearly.
So
yes, we can hear you.
I defined it as oxygen that democracy needs to thrive. That's what the civic space means. So a leader that responds to doctor strikes with mass sacks is not a citizen leader. A leader that responds to pensioners' demands for their entitlements, you respond to it with tear gas to disperse them. That's not a citizen leader. A leader that when young people demand for safety and protection from police brutality and you respond with military invasion, that's not a citizen leader. A leader that, what that means, that type of leader has to recognize and respect dissent. That dissent does not always mean a challenge to constituted authority. Dissent means that people have contrary opinions and have the right, and that goes back to that fundamental question I asked at the outset. When you meet minority priorities or minority views and interests in a democracy where the majority say we want this and the minority say they want that, that dissent, how does that leader manage dissent? That is very critical. If any leader that cannot manage dissent, then is probably unfit to govern a heterogeneous society like Nigeria. Nigeria has about 250 ethnic groups, and 250 ethnic groups means that people are raised in plural environment, different social, cultural, political socializations. And there are going to be points of intersection, and there are also going to be points of tension, no matter how educated and civilized we are. It stems and flows from our heterogeneity. So it means that for a leader to function effectively, he must be able to manage different ways that can respond to these differences, huge differentials among the citizens. Then I think there's some, it's been addressed a lot of, during the keynote, the question of inclusion and representation.
Our panelists are difficult to stop, but if you can round up, Victoria.
Yeah, so the question of inclusion and representation is very, very, very critical. I would say the Constitution inserted the federal character in principle to uphold that principle of inclusion and balanced representation, but that has been largely unfollowed. Then how a leader that respects the civic space, of course, will understand that a necessary ingredient for accommodating dissent would be balanced representation, because that way you will accommodate minority interests even before they become controversial or contentious issues. And in conclusion, I would say again, like I said at the beginning, that morals alone, character, education alone, that we've had all of that. We've had presidents with PhDs, we've had presidents that are young, we've had presidents that are old, but we need the systemic and the legal and the constitutional infrastructure to be modified, to be reworked in ways that will enable a strong leader to function effectively. And if that kind of infrastructure is not in place, even if you got the best sense, it's still going to be impossible for that person to function, because the adequate firewalls that the person needs to, from one, to take strong decisions, and also to be repelled when the person wants to go out of line, they're not in place. And where those things are not in place, but abuse is inherent. So I will conclude with the summary that while we need a good leader, we must also back it up with the necessary ingredients. We must put those in, all the firewalls that we need, all the benchmarks, all the indicators, all of the constitutional protections and checks and balances need to be in place for that leader to be what we want him to be. Let me leave it here, maybe answer questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Victoria. It has been awesome. And I can't agree less with Idayat Hassan, who said that this is the best discussion she has witnessed in the last 1 year. And I want to thank all the people that have joined us and all those that are listening through the social media handles. We want to particularly thank and welcome Dr. Abiola Akyode, Dr. Adi Audi, Dr. Chris Ugu, Lizzie Ibine, Lucky Barak, Ngozi Izwara, Rebecca Sakujon, Stella Maris, Maureen Okwe, and many other people. Please, if you have any questions or comments, you should put it in the chat box or raise your hand. Already 2 people have raised their hands, and I will take them in the order in which they raise their hands. The first person is Tunde Salman, and then will be followed by Dr. Abiola Akyode. So Tunde, over to you.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to be part of this discussion. It is very, very robust and educative, and I agree with all the conversation. If start from the chairman of the occasions and the keynote speaker as well as the panelists. My concern is what will now be the role of the followership? How do we mobilize the followership to, when we identify sets of leaders that have some of these qualities that have been put on the table today, how do we, given the work that we civil society do, we don't want to be necessarily partisan. We don't, even though we could be political, how do we marry and navigate and get the mass of the people to really line behind such kind of leadership? What role should we now play in this kind of space between now and 2023 and beyond. Undoubtedly, everybody knows that we must get Nigerian on a path of growth and development moving forward from 2023. But how do we raise that critical mass? Bearing in mind that the total voting turnout in the last 6 general elections we have had is always below 50% of the registered voters. How do we get more young Nigerians to come out to vote and recognize all these things that we are talking about? This is my only two contributions. And more importantly, when those leaders now emerge, if they are now going off the path of the kind of things that we have put on the table, how do we correct them? How do we correct them without being, okay, it's being pro this, pro that? And we know that obviously we are all human beings. We can make mistakes. And we've seen some of these things in the last couple of years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Today, Saman, for your contribution. Now let's listen to Abiola Akinode. Dr. Abiola Akinode, over to you. Dr. Abiola, we're waiting for you. You can unmute and make your contribution or questions. Well, it appears Abiola is not ready. So, Sunkani.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I want to sincerely thank you for this opportunity, and of course, what you and your team are doing over there. It's such a very educative one. I also want to thank all the speakers and the panelists, but I would love to come from this dimension, and I will end it with a question. I'm a young activist and I work within the community of young people, but I've often realized that the class of young people that want the betterment of this nation, we are highly insignificant in number compared to the class that does not necessarily want things to work. In the sense that, okay, let's take, for example, the EndSARS protests that took place the other time. We saw the genuine interest of young Nigerians at wanting things to get better, but unfortunately, it was hijacked by hoodlums. And we equally saw what happened in Kaduna yesterday, the peaceful protest, and it was equally hijacked by hoodlums. And what happened, of course, not far-fetched from the works of the politicians. And my question will now be, everything happening in the country affects all of us as young people, poor education, health, and what all sorts of. How can we engage this class of young people that are actually drawing us 100 steps backward at every attempt for us to make things work or to demand for better governance in this country? I say once again, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sukami, Michael. Let's listen to Kingsley Atan. Kingsley Atan.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for this huge opportunity. It is an absolute delight to listen to great men and women speak on the kind of leadership we want to see in 2023. I'm going to be coming from the angle that will really look at what would influence the kind of leadership that we really, really want. And what role is the civil society ready to play or will play, that after looking out for all these qualities, and then we have those right people who will be able to come out and lead us. If we look at from history, you will see you have more of these technocrats who are barely just appointed. And after they're appointed, probably they go for political offices. Most of those people who are elected, you would rarely see them come up with these qualities or even possess these qualities. It is no doubt that young people mostly are being used as political pawns to influence whatever selfish interests of most of these politicians. And the movement in the EndSARS has clearly shown how much young people are now politically aware, but how do we sustain this, especially in the grassroots, where people will still believe that most of the young people around there are hoodlums. They are not hoodlums. But the truth of the matter is, how can we be able to influence them positively? So look out for this set of qualities from leaders who will come to meet them, who will come to want to influence them campaign to get into power, to get into office. Letting them understand that their vote, it is their right. They shouldn't sell it. If they are selling it, obviously they are selling their future. And this, let us not forget that there is poverty in the land. And most of these politicians are taking advantage of this fact and want the system to remain that way so they can keep exploiting it. So they can keep exploiting the system because there is poverty. So when you come and fling 1,000 naira, 500,000 naira, these people would reach out to. So the elite youth are not even ready to go out there to be on the field. So how do we ensure that these qualities are out there in the eyes of the grassroots youth so that they can be able to be aware and choose these leaders they want to lead from an informed position? Thank you.
Much, Kingsley. Can we hear from Joy Jaisimi? You said he has a question. Joy Jaisimi.
Hello, good afternoon, all. Nice discussion and nice interactions. You know, in the last few months, with the issues we've been having in our country, Nigeria, with all the ethnicity, region, and so many issues, insecurity along the line in our countries, and the politics and politicians and how they've not really helped the country and helped in moving the country forward. So I kept thinking, I was like, is democracy actually the system of government that should work in Nigeria? Can't we also look for another system of government that will work in our environment like Nigeria? I'm just thinking, democracy is a system of government that is really, really suitable for this country, Nigeria. I think I want Dr. Hussein and Dr. Idayat to please answer this question. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Husseini and Idayat, can we look for another system of government? I think you take note and we'll come back to you on that. Linda Chizoba, please, you can make your contribution.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity, and it's been an awesome discussion so far. So my question is, looking at the Nigerian political system so far, and the past leaders that have been in the helm of affairs, for every 4 years, they come with their own different plans, different policies, different rules to make the country go far. But it seems it gets worse as the year goes by. So my question is, looking at the Nigerian system, when politicians go in there, they don't do what they are supposed to do. Is there a system set up to hinder these activities, like our constitutions? Are there actually constitutions? Are there actually policies in the constitutions that back up development? Are there constitutions that support economic activities? Are there constitutions that support peaceful integration? So I want to know if all those things are in the constitution, because this leader go there and they still do the same thing and even worse than their predecessors. Do we have constitutions that back up economic activities? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Very good question, Linda. The guest speaker and panelists will answer, but I can tell you, yes, chapter 2 of the Constitution covers all of those issues, but they will talk more on it. Rosemary F. Young, say you have been raising your hand. Maybe you have been raising it physically. I've not seen it electronically, but you can speak now.
I've been there. Good morning, doctor, and good morning, everybody. I want to thank all the presenters and everyone that has spoken. And this is a very robust platform that I've engaged for some time now. If all what we have discussed here, the ideas, the laudable ideas, suggestion, and we are talking to ourselves now. I want to ask before I conclude, what is the way forward? Because the time is ticking. The political party are strategizing who they will present or give us by force, because Nigerian electoral system is either you take it or you leave it. So now, I've put in the chat box that we have to get out of talking to ourselves, reaching out to the political party, engaging them, seeing they are all Nigerians and they are seeing the problem that we have identified and discussed. We have to start discussing with them. This is the kind of leadership we need. Civil society have to play a role, not just waiting until when things get worse or get bad, we now jump in and we start criticizing. We should start seeing ourselves as part of the system in our country. So we should start engaging the political party and their members. This is how our country should be governed, and this is the quality and the capacity of people we need. Then thereafter, civil society should engage on massive voters' education. We saw what has happened 2015, 2019, where people were given a pack or a wrap of Maggi and salt. And the poverty level has increased from that period till now, more than what it was. As they continue eating that Maggi up to today, they are suffering more. And our system, our economic, our security, our social life is going down by the day. So it is very important from the presentation of Dr. Seni and other discussants, they have highlighted a lot, which we can make it so handy, bring out those points, make it to be smart, because politicians will not have time like civil society to go and sit down and be reading volumes of documents. We make it very snappy and start engaging them. Not the kind of capacity building that after they win election, we say we want to build their capacity. Emergency arrangement, it doesn't work. We want leaders that are embedded with certain qualities as we have discussed and let them lead us 2020.
Thank you very much. I think we have lost her. So let's hear from Joshua Esio. Please, briefly, 2 minutes. Joshua Esio.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. On my part, you know, we've heard so many, we've attended so many kind of forum like this where we talk. So I want to ask, you know, it's obvious now that it's the politician against the people. Now, if we are on the part of the people, what are we doing? What step are we actually taking? Why they are planning their own strategies? What step are the civic organization planning in order to bring this kind of
Sorry, Joshua, your line is not clear, but I think we've heard some of the things you said. I think Husseini addressed some of them. Leadership does not emerge from civil society, but we can engage, we can build consciousness, we can educate people, and I think that is what I think Rosemary Effiong also mentioned. So let's hear from Honorable Wisdom. Wisdom Odomero. Honorable Wisdom, can you unmute yourself and speak? Hello? Can you hear me, Honorable Wisdom? Okay, if Honorable Yvonne is not available, can we hear from Thaddeus Ugo?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Thaddeus.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, I want to appreciate the speakers and the panelists. I mean, that has been so wonderful. But my question, quick one, my question is, yes, you know, curiosity as to the civil society, I'm sure we're not blind to the fact that we have been organizing even in the past. And of course, one tends to wonder if our organizing has failed to make the necessary impact in terms of mobilizing the people, in terms of disabusing the mind on the kind of leadership that we actually wanted or want. And then, so my question now will be, in this phase, because we've discussed, yes, we want to do this, we want to see Nigeria grow, we want to see new leadership, of course, effective leadership and all that. And Nigeria being set on the path of development and growth. But then again, in this phase of shrinking civic space, my question is, how do we begin to strategically and differently organize so that our organizing and our efforts could be impactful in terms of the kind of, emergency in the kind of leadership that we want, so that at the end of the day, we could actually, you know, build our chest. And so, of course, as our organizing actually also produce this kind, what we've been agitating or wanting for. So that's just my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is the last question. So we'll go back to the panelists to comment the questions and make their closing remarks. Let's start from Victoria Ibeze Mohari. Victoria. Victoria, is Victoria on? Okay, Victoria is not yet on. Can we hear from?
Hello.
Yeah, okay, Victoria. Please go ahead.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Let me just take on the last question. In the climate of shrinking civic space, I think I mentioned it during my presentation that the leader we need has to be a respecter of the civic space. And I think that question was based on our current experiences, where current leaders regard every form of contrary opinion and every type of dissent as a challenge to their authority. And they push back with force, either in the form of judicial persecution, in the form of arrest, in the form of detentions, or using restrictive legislative, either the proposals or restrictive legislation. So for people to push back is, I wanted to talk about the Fourth Amendment before my time went up, which is a critical mass of followers who are determined to hold their citizens accountable. And again, I think for citizens to do that effectively and be somewhat protected from the kind of reprisals we are seeing in a shrinking civic space environment, they need legal protections. The legal frameworks and infrastructure that we need to protect citizens when they want to hold leaders to accountable. Some of those legal frameworks are either lacking or the ones that we have are inadequate. So there's need to strengthen those legal frameworks to enable and give citizens the power that they should wield to hold citizens in check. So that element of check from citizenship is missing, but that should not mean that citizens should be discouraged. In an era of digital transformation or digital revolution that we are now, so the space is actually widening. We are transitioning away from just having strict offline rallies and offline assemblies. We are now transitioning into digital assemblies, which means that there are now more spaces online and offline for citizens to converge, to express themselves, to hold, to ask very hard questions. And in asking that hard question, citizens need resources, they need information. They need to understand the content of the political blueprints that are being implemented that cause them hardship. What is the idea of the governor? What is this policy that the governor is bringing? What is this program the governor is bringing? And how can we participate? How do we ask questions? Why is this budget? Why is it 20,000 naira to buy toothpick? So I will encourage citizens that despite the inadequacies in the legal system, despite the inadequacies in our constitutional system, they must continue to take advantage of the opportunities available to them. Now we're having the constitutional review process coming forward very soon. It's also another platform for citizens to engage and continue to, make the necessary shifts that are needed to enable leaders function effectively.
Thank you very much, Victoria. So let's hear from Idayat. Idayat.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Right to the question in terms of democracy, I think what we must never forget is that the worst of democracy is better than that of a military regime. Experience has actually shown us. Even visits to authoritarian countries have actually made some of us to even reconsider the thought of a Rwanda where things work, but rights are trampled upon. And importantly, I think we should actually start redefining what our response to or questioning if what we currently run is a democracy in Nigeria, especially when you look at the tenets of democracy itself. Where are rights? What is the quality of the elections? What is the quality of elections that brings in these people into office? Are there majority rule and minority rights? These are the questions we should actually ask ourselves in the face of what we continue to see on daily basis in this country, and then agree on how to move forward in 2023. And I think that some of the discussions are already clear-cut for us. The kind of manifestos, policies that these parties are even presenting to us, the quality of the engagement ahead of the elections, the quality of election management itself, we should start having this kind of discussions at not just this elitist level, but up to the quality, to the local level, the micro you can think of in communities and languages that they understand. If that can actually lead to the kind of democracy and the development that we need as a people. And I think that for me, in conclusion, while leadership is very, very important, and we must aspire to have those leaders with those 5 characteristics or 6 that we have actually mentioned the whole of today, we must recognize that the quality of citizenship will continue to define the quality of democracy that we will actually enjoy in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's hear from Charles. Is Charles still around? Charles, you see? Yes, Charles is
Yes,
around.
I'm still here.
Yes,
Yeah.
so your concluding thoughts.
Okay, my concluding thoughts, 2 things. One, there is evidence on ground that Nigerians can work together. Our diversity is not a problem. We only need to aggregate, and evidence on ground abounds. If you look at examples of how people have connived to steal, for every big level of fraud in this country, you'll find all tribes and religions represented. So that's an example, though a bad example, but it shows that when the chips are down, the Nigerians are serious. They get together, they converge, and they work together. And so on that note, I would argue that we should, as a population, as a people, be localized in our strategy, in holding our leaders to account. And like Dia said, we are too focused on the presidency. A lot is happening at state level, and the kind of change we seek, going forward, the kind of change, there is no change anywhere in the world that has happened as a one big bang explosion at the center. It always starts at granular levels, at local levels, at state level, which means that we should aggregate more around our local government, along our states, and we should engage. And then finally, the second part is, again, in talking about a democracy, we're in a democracy. And we should be honest to confront the brutal facts of our situation where we want to engage in the democratic process. And I say this especially in relation to the most recent experience we're having in Kaduna. Let's put the issues on the table and interrogate those issues. In my previous, my earlier submission, I mentioned 3 qualities of a leader. I said disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. When we talk about disciplined thought, we must be honest to confront the facts on the table. What is happening in Kaduna State today? The governors argue that the civil service is bloated. And you can make that same argument even at national level. You can make that at every level of governance in this country, where we have some people in some ministries where their work is to open elevator door for you. Some people, their work is actually to give you tissue paper to enter public toilet, and they are on payroll of government. Let us be honest, that we cannot continue with that kind of structure, honestly. But the question is, as a leader, how do you present this challenge and engage people to come up with a constructive solution? And I think that is the face of what we're having in Kaduna. The facts are there on the table. They are real. The system of governance in this country will kill us. It will not take us any further. If you bring the best of leaders in 2023 and you still have governors with the kind of convoys we have, we still have senators and House of Rep members with the kind of security and protocol that they have, then we may not make much progress. That is the fact. Are we ready to confront it? If that is the case, it means it will take some painful process to realign and to renegotiate, not to take us, to the promised land. And a leader should be able to recognize this, that it is sensitive, it's going to be painful, and so you must accompany and empathize with people in this journey. What kind of leader will take us? What leader will demonstrate this quality to be able to do that? Again, there's evidence on the table that there are leaders who have been able to prove that they can bring out change. Otherwise, we will not be talking about people like Dr. Dora Akinwumi. We're talking of Dr. Stella. There are many of them. We have Dr. Adeshina. We have Okonjo-Iweala. We have people who have proved that as Nigerians, they can deliver change. So we are not devoid of quality of people. We are not devoid in terms of our ability to reason and engage with government. We need a leader who will be able to activate it and bring that platform for us to engage. And that's what we will be saying in 2023 going forward, not just at the presidency level, but at state level, at state houses of assembly. Why are they silent? In all the impasse we're having currently, how many state of houses of assembly have we seen engaging their governors constructively? Or they have just become, a member of the governance entourage. So those are some of the questions, and I think that there's an opportunity for us to rally around more at state and local government level to bring the kind of change we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We need leaders at all levels, and we need to make sure that these leaders are not really scarce in Nigeria. We have it in all sectors. We made some examples. The challenges in the political leadership, and we need to do all we can to make sure that this happens. Dr. Hussaini, last words.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank colleagues for all your comment and the panelists. I don't know. I think the earlier comments have captured some of the key issues. I just want to reiterate a few things. One, I have a very devoted to technocratic leadership, and I have been probably very consistent in that. I did mention about how previous government have been able to assemble some people and how those people are making progress in their respective field in wherever they are. Which is a proof of their quality, which is true. But again, I'm very concerned about people who come in here just simply because they want to have something to stamp on their CV, and we call it leadership, and then they move on. A lot of us have this background. I'm a technician, I'm a technocrat, but I worry about our approach to leadership and our understanding of nation and our
I think Seni has gone off. So thank you very much, Seni. So let me just round up. I think it has been a very, very, very useful discussion from the lead presentation to the panelists, to all the discussions. A lot of things have come out clearly. From the welcome address by Koli Shetima, who noted that the leadership issues in Nigeria borders on both geographic, ethnic, age, and religious. And we
whatever. I've not finished. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, no, so just round up. You were off before.
Okay, so I was wrapping up that yes, that we can remember what these people are doing and we remember their names and what they have done in the country at the time that they were getting their CVs polished for these new roles they have. My attitude is that, look, technocrats must actually recognize that even after building the state, we need a nation. We need the people and we respect the people. That's really very key for me. Number two is about youth. Somebody asked a question about youth leadership and what youth are doing. For me, I actually think that, yes, our Burundian youth are doing quite well. Our social media space, the advocacy, the NSAS protest was actually a reawakening, both for young people in terms of what they can do, and also for the government in terms of the need to actually respond to certain realities of the country. But again, for me, what I found a bit uncomfortable, also from the experiences of social movement around the world, is about the leadership thing. I know that those of us in social media discourse feels that it doesn't have to have a leader. No, what we are saying is that you don't need a standard leader who is existing like Otive to lead a social movement. That the movement, the issue itself can be able to develop, to produce its own leader. And once that action is over, it is probably over for that leader unless he raises a new issue. But we had a movement that people kept counting and saying we should not have a leader. It shouldn't have a leader. From the experiences everywhere around the world, when you have such a situation, it is hijacked, it is abused, and then you lose it. And there are several countries who can provide this example. I hope we all learn from this. And lastly, for me, is the civil society. I think there's a lot we can do as civil society. And I really, really think that we should actually be the kind of change we want to see in our society. It worries me, particularly the nature and the way we are managing our civil society these days. It worries me coming from this background. I feel that we need to strengthen our civil society diversity. We need to strengthen that. And this is what I've been saying in the last 3 years. That it doesn't give a good message, a good impression that once we look at an NGO and we just look at the founder of the NGO or the leadership of the NGO, then you can actually assume the kind of staff that will be in that NGO. I think it should not be. I think we should open up our organizations for diversity, because it is that diversity that will allow for our own robust engagement at national level, and we can also hold institutions to account in terms of this diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hussaini. I think it has been a very robust discussion. As I was saying, right from the chairman's opening remark, it was clear that we need to look at issues of geography, ethnic, age, and religious beyond as part of what we need for the leadership for 2023. And the keynote speaker was clear that the next leader should come from the southern part of the country and should not be a Muslim.
What if the substantive chairman have been around for so long and I'm not even giving him any opportunity to say anything. I mean, you are really getting used to power.
Who is that?
Bye.
Oh, I didn't know that, Chairman.
I didn't know he's still there.
I have been around.
Sorry, Chair. Let me do the summary and then you will have the last word, Chair. It also came out clearly that what we need is a democratic developmentalist state because neoliberalism has only brought about increased unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And we need a new system that is based on the democratic developmentalist state. And a lot of qualities of the next leader were rolled out by both the keynote speaker and the panelists. They include that it should be a nation builder and a state builder. It should be able to build strong institutions and also have strong men. It should invest in infrastructure and human capital development. It should have the courage to tell the truth and give honest voice to the challenges of the country. It should be, if not technologically savvy, it should be technologically conscious. It should have commitment to gender equality, be adverse in conflict management, and have commitment to social justice. And above all, it should come with a track record of what he has done in the past. And he should be able to lead from good to great. He should have the qualities of a transformational leader with disciplined team, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. Young people added a perspective. There should be a hardline political leader, a leader that leads by example, visionary with skill set, a global citizen, and a cosmopolitan leader with a sense of duty. The skill set should include being hands-on and can deal with global, regional, and local challenges, and they should also have empathy. We also noted that moral, character, education, and personality are not enough, and there is a need for systemic and constitutional infrastructure for the kind of leadership that we want. That leadership must be a citizen leadership and should have inclusiveness and representation. And then, of course, there were several comments, and the comments, you know, are all around the issues of democracy. No, you can come in. Issues of democracy, issues of how we can, as citizens, engage at all levels. And I'm sure that taking it forward, the center will issue a communique, will popularize the very eloquent presentation of the guest speaker, and we'll continue with the policy dialogue series. Can I yield the floor to the authentic chairman and moderator to give the last words before Dr. Umesi Emenike will give the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Dr. College Shetima.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, this is the problem of people, you give them small power and then they just take everything away as well. But just to say that, you know, thank you very much, Dr. Hussaini, for, I think, provoking this very useful, helpful conversation, and of course, our discussants in the persons of Charles and Hidayat and Victoria, who also added different dimensions to the conversation, which are all of them are excellent part of the, and of course, the number of the provocative statements and questions and others that have been asked or that have been shared on the chat have all helped us to enrich, I think, and I think that by and large, I truly believe that most Nigerians believe in something that is good for everyone in the country. I think that everyone seems to saying that, look, you know, we need to have a progressive country that is founded on fairness and justice, and a unity of the country based on fair and justice to everyone in the country. And I think that for me is critical and very important in defining whatever kind of leadership that will throw up in 2023. But I also don't want us to really simply assume that there will be a 2023. I think that certainly if you talk to INEC people, I think they are much more apprehensive about the situation than probably than the rest of us and other things as well. So I think that what we really need to do is to be very vigilant. And I think that we need to bring together the voices of the middle, the voices of fairness and justice to everyone to be the defining agenda as to between now and 2023, so that we can have a country that works for all and not just for one person or one ethnic group or whatever group that come. I think the folly of all these things is that if people believe that their own is now on power, so then what happens if their own is not in power? Does it mean that they should suffer because of that one? I think that any push towards fairness and justice should be the core, because it means that whoever becomes the president of this country will ensure that each and every one of us has some sense of fairness and justice. And importantly also that provides for all of every Nigerian the basic needs of their citizens as human beings, so that we can have basic amenities like water, electricity, education, and some of the basic needs that we need as society to function as human beings. So let me once again thank everyone for participating. I think at some point we were about almost 100. Now I can see that we are 77, which is still a very high number for people who have been here, which shows the interest of every one of us in this issue, which is of tremendous importance for all of us. So let me now pass on to the director of the center to give the farewell statement, or whatever it is called now, or thank you statement.
Thank you very much for being with us for this period that the dialogue has lasted. We want to thank all of us that have been here for these 2 or 3 hours to look at the issues surrounding the leadership choice for 2023 and beyond. We want to thank all those about 130 of us that started here, and all those that have followed our social media handles throughout the period of this dialogue. We want to especially thank the chairman of the session, Dr. Kole Shetima, and also our keynote speaker, Abdul Hussein, and all the members of the panel who actually engaged the session for this period: Charles Osie, Idayat Hassan, Victoria Ibezimo, Harry, and Tony. We want to say that this has been a very engaging session, and we pray that you come be with us again in the next dialogue, which will take place in the next 3 months. And we believe that with what we are doing, it's a preparatory process for Nigeria becoming greater in the future. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you very soon. It's been a pleasure being with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
God bless you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Presentation.
God bless Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thank you very
You will
much.
get the
Excellent session.
presentation via email.
My Oga Otive. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.